Hey, Brad Guy here with another Pixels Refreshed. I'm the lead artist at Massive Damage Games with over, 10 years of game development experience and 5 years in pixel art. So, I've done lots of pixel art games and animation, and today I'm excited to take a look at The Messenger. Let's get started. Okay, so yeah, today we're playing The Messenger. Really great game. The head of the studio took me and my boss out for dinner before the game came out when we were in Cologne, Germany, and he was actually trying to describe the game to me, and I was actually really excited. He was talking about trying to capture the Master System aesthetic for the base game and more of a Genesis like aesthetic for when you get past the halfway point and then you can switch between both 16-bit and 8-bit. So I'm really curious when I analyze it closely the differences between the 8-bit and 16-bit modes. So we're going to take a look into that and see what we can find. Really cool pixel art intro here, just using flashing colors and whatnot to make it seem animated. I love that, the intro screen there, it's great. Okay, play. Use my save file just so we can assess the art quickly. So, love that little animation there. Pretty good wing flap cycle. It's a little strange on the up frame. I probably would have adjusted that a bit. So the idle animation, pretty solid there. They don't animate the bottom portion of the body as much, but their cape animation's pretty good. I probably would have done a little bit of more of a bob on that. But yeah, it looks great. Portal swirling. Is it just a rotated? Yeah, it's just a rotated image. So pretty interesting. I think it's a rotated. No, it can't be rotated. Curious how they did that. Okay, so anyways, this is where we're going to see the example right away. You wouldn't see this if you waited at the beginning of the game, but when you get halfway point, this starts unlocking. So on this side, you have the 8-bit aesthetic. Couple clear things to note right away is you can see the top change from being a slope to being angled. So, I mean, there were angled 8-bit games, primarily on the NES. Mario 3 had slopes, and a few other games had slopes. It wasn't impossible. It was harder to do. Another thing is just like a much higher texture detail, definitely, and much higher, much more varied textures. You can see the seams on them a little bit, actually, when you pay close attention. I can see exactly where they look like 32 by 32 textures, or maybe 16 by 16. I can check. And then, yeah, this, I don't know if there's a resolution change between them, so this is what I was going to check. So if we just quickly go like this and grab a screen grab of this. Okay. Now, what we're going to do is turn the display off and then put Photoshop on right here. So anyways, I grabbed two screen grabs here to kind of assess the pixel art. And what I discovered is it looks like for both scenes, we're operating at roughly 640 by 360. Now, the reason that this is so important, I've mentioned this in another video, is 640 by 360 is it's odd because it's actually double. Most Super Nintendo games were exactly half of that, and same with like N64 games as well. They were often 320 by 240. But with full screen and widescreen, kind of the modern pixel art is 640 by 360. And the reason is that you can multiply it twice into 1280 by 720, and you can multiply it 3 times, 640 by 360 into, 640 times 3 gives you 1920 by 1080, 1080p, and 640 times 5 gives you, times 4. 640 times 4 gives you 2560 by 1440 or 1440p, and then it skips one, it goes by 6. So 640 times 6 gives you 4K, 3840 by 2160p. So those are your base resolutions, and this is a very popular resolution when doing pixel art for games. Typically, you would want to do your game at either 640 by 360 or 320 by 160, I think. Just trying to get the math off the top of my head. But you would pick one of the two if you want bigger pixels or if you want smaller pixels. Now, the weird thing about this is that they didn't increase the resolution between the different modes of the game. It looks like both of them are operating roughly at 640 by 360 as the base resolution. And then what changes between them is primarily the quality of the tiles, the variety of tiles. So you can see there's just much more variety in tiles. They blend. There's all of these random tiles spread over here and over here. And with the with the overall color palette. So my guess is if you were to, we can check this out actually. So if we go to export to web, we can kind of reduce the colors and see when it looks normal. So if we drop this to, let's see, so 16, is that too much? 32 colors. At 32 colors, it looks almost identical. Oh, we got a little bit off to the side. Let's just crop that so it's not interfering with our colors. Okay, so let's just crop that and let's see. So image, let's go file, export, save for web, and let's drop this down and see what we get. So drop it down to 16 colors. It looks identical. So, I mean, once you go to 8, you can clearly see it's doing weird things. So it looks like they're really heavily reducing their colors, somewhere between 16 or 32. But I guarantee when we switch to the more Genesis aesthetic, so right here we got the Sega Genesis aesthetic, I'm curious how this one holds out. So let's save for web, and let's see how many. If we go to 16, you lose all of that information right there right away. So immediately you have to go up to 32. At 32, you get all of these details back, and I'm curious whether we go to 64 to pop. Yeah, so it's 64 colors. So we're seeing like more than a doubling of colors in what they're doing to represent higher bitrate games. So pretty cool stuff. I think this is overall pretty interesting. I'll go into kind of an assessment of the animation and stuff now. All right, so let's assess some of the animation and stuff in this game. I'm going to be a bit rusty, and I have a little bit of input lag when I play, so it's not going to feel exactly the way that, like, I'm not going to be playing at my absolute best. Really good. I wonder how these skulls change between the modes. They don't change all that much. Okay. I guess there's some things for consistency that it helped keeping the resolution the same in this game. There's a portal there that changes the world. The circle portals you can use. So we have parallax right here. I'm curious if we drop down. It's probably one of the things that disappears between the versions. If we go into this portal, I bet the parallax turns off. I mean, there's still a bit of background parallax, actually. So it's primarily, I know that they reduced the parallax. I love the animation there. So on the front flames, the fact that he turns and you see his back, that nice extreme pose, is really good. And then the swipe on the blade is nice too. Looks like there's pretty low frame rate on the animations. I'm curious if we go in here what the difference is between those. Okay. It's like 2 frames. Okay, so they definitely improved the animation quantity of frames. So they've reduced the frame rate by quite a bit here. So it looks like 1, 2, 3, 4, like 5 to 10 frames total, whereas this has a lot more in-betweens, and they can see that they've actually baked some of that light into the sprite. So they have more colors to work with, so they played a lot more with the animation. Let's go over and see these enemies over here and see if there's anything else we can see. Okay. Many more frames of animation. You got those little driplets and like droplets and stuff. I'm curious, this background, yeah. So you have parallax layers. You have, so 1, 2, looks like 3 background parallax layers. I want to test that now. I'm gonna lose in a second. Okay, let's go over here. Nice. I mean, it's kind of crazy. The biggest limitations that they did were reductions in animation and reductions in color palette. So anyways, we go to a different area. Let's go check a different area out and get a look at the art there. So maybe the original, this forest area over here. Loading. Okay, so here we go. Got the base aesthetic and it crosses. So yeah, color palette reduces. The water gets much more simple. So, I mean, not that the water is that much more complicated. They do a lot more to reinforce the animation. Character animation isn't even animated in its idle pose in the 8-bit mode. But when you're in the 16 mode, then you have an idle animation. So they're kind of just showing how limited people were with how sprites and things when they were forced to focus on the Master System versus the Genesis and those advantages. And it's probably one of the truest examples. I see people all the time kind of call 8-bit games like 16-bit looking games, 8-bit games, and things like that, which just isn't true. Most of the time, you can tell by the intensity of the color palette and yeah, overall animation quality and things like that. And obviously, much more significant use of parallax and stuff in the scenes. So, anyways, that's a bit of my rusty input lag play. I'll go to one more area and give this a check. Nice. Okay, I really like the art here. The amount of it's just a really nice detail in the trees. You can tell they reused the same asset and then they just darkened it gradually, almost with a gradient there. I feel like I should be remembering something gameplay-wise that I just don't remember. Anyways, let's see if we can find a warp spot over here. Come on. Okay, so overall really cool. Oh, this will change the mode, I think, doesn't it? Oh, you get like windows into the retro look. It's pretty sweet. Forgot about that. I mean, obviously, in order to do this, I think that I remember the director on this game telling me how and that they had to make had both scenes running simultaneously all the time in order to pull off some of these tricks, which is, I mean, cool. It's hard. There's a lot of opportunity for bugs in that. So, I mean, obviously, you can create cool effects like this by doing things like that, but it's very hard to do this this kind of thing in a game. It's just going to make so many edge cases where a bit of game logic isn't going to cross over, so you need a lot of QA for stuff like that. But really cool stuff. Yeah, I think I'm about through here. Overall, really good job. Some stuff with the animation I might have gone a little bit crazier with, but this kind of makes it truer to games like Ninja Gaiden and stuff that you would have had back in the day. Muffled music when you cross in the bottom here. Awesome. So, let's wrap this up. They did a really great job. I think it's a phenomenal game. I played through it when it came out, and I think, yeah, if anyone's interested, they should too. It's a really cool. It's really cool how they figured out how they were going to make their aesthetic read as 8-bit and 16-bit simultaneously when switching between the modes. The biggest thing, obviously, that they were doing that I mentioned is they're increasing the the quantity of animation, both in regards to the character animations and in terms of like animated aspects of the scene. They're also increasing the color palette dramatically while keeping the resolution the same. So it's kind of interesting how, you know, sprite size and color palette and things like that can do so much to make and also tile variety. Having a larger variety of tiles with more color into them will really bring a scene to life. So yeah, anyways, that was The Messenger. Feel free to like and subscribe, and I'll catch you on the next one.